I investigated 5 AI businesses. Here's the one I'd build. Everybody seems to have a different answer to the same question. What's the best AI business to start right now? Ask 5 YouTubers and you'll probably get 5 different answers. Content creation, lead generation, automation, virtual assistants, consulting. Everyone seems convinced they've found the winner, so I decided to stop listening to opinions and investigate the 5 AI businesses that keep showing up everywhere. Not to find the easiest, not to find the trendiest, not to find the one making the wildest income claims. I wanted to answer one simple question. If I had to spend the next 3 years building one AI business, which one would I choose? And by the end of this investigation, the answer wasn't what I expected, because the business I thought would win didn't. And the business that eventually came out on top wasn't even in my top 2 when I started. If you're interested in AI, online business, and figuring out what's actually worth your time, make sure you're subscribed. Every week, I dig through the hype, the trends, and the promises to find out what deserves attention and what probably doesn't. Now, before we start, I judged every business using 3 filters. First, is there real demand? Second, can a normal person realistically start it? And third, will it still matter 3 years from now? That third question ended up changing everything. Let's start with AI content creation, video editing, short-form clips, repurposing content, social media posts. This is probably the most visible AI business on the internet right now, and honestly, it looks strong. Businesses need content, creators need content, brands need content, demand is everywhere. For a while, I thought this would be difficult to beat. Then I noticed the problem. The tools keep getting better. Every month, more of the technical work becomes automated. The barrier to entry keeps dropping, and when everybody gets access to the same tools, competition explodes. Suddenly, the value isn't the software. It's taste, judgment, strategy, creativity. That's a much harder thing to sell. The opportunity is still real, but it dropped lower on my list than I expected. Next was AI virtual assistant services, and this one surprised me. Because the product isn't really AI, the product is time. Business owners will always pay to get time back. Emails, scheduling, research, admin. The technology might change, the problem doesn't. And that's when I started noticing a pattern. The strongest businesses weren't built around AI. They were built around solving permanent problems. That moved virtual assistant services near the top of the rankings. Then I got to lead generation. And honestly, at this point I thought I'd found the winner. Businesses want customers. Businesses pay for customers. Businesses pay for customers. It's one of the easiest value propositions in the world to understand. Help me make money. I'll pay you. Simple. The logic is almost impossible to argue with, until I noticed something. Everyone else had noticed it too. The more I researched lead generation, the more agencies I found, the more outreach services I found, the more people I found chasing the exact same opportunity. The market was crowded, very crowded. The opportunity hadn't disappeared, but the competition changed the equation, and suddenly lead generation started slipping. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I'm curious. Which one would you choose right now? Content creation, virtual assistant services, lead generation, or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments, because where I ended up genuinely surprised me. At this point, virtual assistant services were leading. Lead generation had dropped, content creation had dropped, and then I got to automation, and everything changed. Not because it's exciting, actually it's kind of boring. Nobody dreams about workflow automation. Nobody gets excited about repetitive processes. But businesses do, because businesses lose money through inefficiency every single day. Tasks that should take minutes take hours. People manually moving information between systems. Teams doing work that probably shouldn't exist anymore. And the more businesses I looked at, the more I kept seeing the same problem. Waste. Wasted time. Wasted effort. Wasted resources. And unlike trends, waste never goes away. That was the first business where I thought, this isn't a trend. This is infrastructure. This sits underneath everything else. But before I made a decision, there was one final contender: AI governance and compliance. Now I'll be honest, when I first looked at this one, I almost ignored it. It sounded boring, technical, complicated, but the deeper I went, the more interesting it became. Large organizations care about risk, privacy, security, compliance, data protection, and those concerns are only growing. For a brief moment, I actually wondered whether I'd completely underestimated it. The budgets are bigger, the competition is lower, the clients are larger. But eventually one thing pushed it down the rankings. The barrier to entry. For most people starting from scratch, it's simply a much harder business to enter. And that's when the answer finally became obvious. Automation won, not by a little, by a lot. And here's why. It beat content creation because it isn't becoming commoditized as quickly. It beat lead generation because it doesn't depend on constant outreach and increasingly crowded markets. It beat virtual assistant services because it's easier to scale beyond your own time. And it beat governance because the barrier to entry is dramatically lower. But the biggest reason it won was this. Every business eventually needs it. Every business wants more efficiency. Every business wants less waste. Every business wants better systems. And unlike many AI opportunities, those needs aren't tied to trends. They're tied to reality. But the biggest reason it won was this. Every business eventually needs it. Every business wants more efficiency. Every business wants less waste. Every business wants better systems. And unlike many AI opportunities, those needs aren't tied to trends. They're tied to reality. But here's the twist. The biggest lesson from this investigation wasn't which business won. It was what lost. The businesses that dropped down the rankings all had one thing in common. They were tied to trends. The winner was tied to a problem. And that's completely changed how I think about opportunities. Because most people ask, what's the best AI business? But the better question is, which problem will still exist 5 years from now? That's usually where the real opportunity is hiding. Now here's where things get interesting. If I had 3 years to build something, automation is what I'd choose, no question. But that's not the situation most people are in. Most people aren't asking, what's the best AI business for the next 3 years? They're asking, how do I make money? And preferably sooner rather than later. And that's where everything changes, because the AI business I'd build for the next 3 years is not the same AI business I'd choose if I needed money in the next 30 days. Not even close. In fact, the answer surprised me. Because it wasn't the business getting the most hype, it wasn't the business most creators recommend, and it definitely wasn't automation. So in the next video, I'm answering a much harder question. If I needed money in the next 30 days, what AI business would I start? Because when the clock is ticking, the rules change. Subscribe if you don't want to miss that one, and I'll see you in the next video.